He just told me about it Sunday. He told me
So-
about it.
I just sent an email out to Steve Kansas saying, who do you want to send letters to,
Mhm.
you know, and I'll go
I
to,
don't see.
I'm saying, in my driveway, smash the windows.
No, I still don't see it. I am on Zoom.
Okay.
Do I have to unmute? No, I shouldn't have.
No,
Subdivision causation.
Got
You
nothing.
can never snuff out.
We're gonna have to do some tests. I
I
don't
could
know that
just
we're gonna
say,
end up working.
that my parents, when they didn't do drugs themselves.
Oh,
you know, I
there it
had drugs.
Yes, but speakers
I didn't have.
will not
I didn't
pick
know
up
what-
the Zoom side.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so
So we
always
can't
had-
use that. It's gotta be
It's not so
the,
busy that day.
it's gotta be the.
People-
That's where it is.
For drugs.
Where it is.
For drugs.
Okay.
No, I think
It's right here.
why?
You mean to him or something?
You know, because I have much better things to do.
Why? It's
And but you
So
know,
it's
I'm
not the
saying-
USB anymore.
That's changed. That's new.
Okay,
Great.
so let me take a picture so we can take.
Well, let's hope. So we're gonna have to test that. So you might need to sign into Mixler and check right now.
I don't, you know.
Because right now we're broadcasting all everything is the same.
No, maybe
How
on
does it
Zoom.
get Dry, then how do you keep them?
No, because I-
together?
Zoom,
Yeah,
and YouTube.
because you're recording.
It's not recording, it's live.
Oh, yeah.
But do you know a family who hasn't been touched by this?
Okay, you can stop it on yours.
But we need to have you sign the picture to see if that's what it is. And it has to be unmuted. in order to activate it.
You know?
I guess
You know, it's weird.
I need this, and then you send the next slide, it's muted.
Let me-
Next
I'm
slide.
gonna-
Actually
working
on it's not, which I don't know.
Okay, I'll have him find out.
Can I record it then? I want to hear it.
Well, I think part of why my
If
younger.
I started on my phone, we could tell if it's recording,
Straight
right?
arrow is
Maybe.
we
But we
saw.
wouldn't be able to.
Oh, we can get it started, so we can't
It's
test
probably
it.
age
Okay.
18
There we are recording. Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. Today is Tuesday, November 1st. I'm still not prepared for it to be November 2022. This is the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session. So we will start by reviewing our business meeting agenda for tonight. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll have a citizen comment period. We don't have a whole lot on our agenda tonight. We then we'll go straight to 4 legislative items to consider. And the first one is going to be consideration of ordinance 388, which is approving an amendment to the 2022-2023 budget. This is what we had Scott talk to us about last meeting, and then we had a public hearing on it where we didn't get any comments on it. Scott, anything you want to add?
No, nothing changed. I fixed the typo that I had in the description, the one item where I had that wrong, but the amount that I had listed was accurate. So yeah, there's nothing new unless you have questions.
Council, anything from that last week or last meeting that we want to discuss? Okay. So we'll just mention that we've discussed it in this meeting, and we won't have Scott address it again in the business meeting. The next item is consideration of resolution 2022-56, which is approving the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan. So that is on our staff reports. No, it's not. Okay, so why don't Mike, do you want to give us an update?
Sure, yeah. The plan's been unchanged. We talked about it a couple council meetings ago and had it on for public hearing at the last meeting. Didn't get any. It's been through planning commission already. It's been updated substantially from where it was to where it is now to make sure it reflects all of the city's different master plans. It's a resolution and not an ordinance because it was kind of this regional collaborative effort. So we're acknowledging it as the city, but it's not an amendment to the general plan like our other initiated master plans are. But nothing else to add unless there's any questions.
Council, do you want to talk about this for a second?
Well, I would just like to, make the comment that I think it's a good start. I'm always in favor of working with other cities that surround us toward best outcomes regionally. And so I look forward to seeing how we can make our transportation master plan congruent with the goal in the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan that states that Fort Union Boulevard will become a safe place for cyclists and pedestrians there on the west end of our city, so that we can citizens who want to cycle or walk out of our city on Fort Union Boulevard can in fact do that. That'll take some real integration from what it is now, and I look forward to that. As well as I just want to state that the part of the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan that pertains to our city within our city boundaries, I look forward to seeing that developed with neighborhood bypass routes that are meaningful, that can immediately help cyclists to be able to get around and run some of their errands, do some of their trips that are only 3 to 5 miles on their bicycles. I look forward to seeing that be prioritized.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Bro. So I actually talked to our city manager, Tim Tingy, just earlier today. If we didn't pass this, would there be any potential for not being able to get a grant? And there are possibly some grants out there that would need an active transportation plan in place. And so I just wanted to add that. So that's something we discussed earlier. So
Great.
As just a question, for our part, the stuff that's within the city, if we to change that, would just be another resolution if we decided to add a path or change something specific.
Yeah, you could update it by resolution. We probably want to update other plans as well because there is overlap and redundancy, and it's good to have that from the local level all the way up to the regional level to show that consistency throughout. But yeah, definitely could change it.
Or no, anything, or,
No, I'm good with it.
okay, great. The next item for this evening is consideration of resolution 2022-57. Approving an appointment to the Arts Council. Our city manager, Tim Tingy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we had this application from Camilla and she had an opportunity, Paula and I had the opportunity to meet with her and talk with her for quite some time about her experience. She has amazing experience in the arts. And I think will be a great asset with her mix of performances that she's done as well as other things. So we're excited she's willing to be a part of this and I'm recommending approval of her appointment.
Great. Questions, comments?
I think this is a great ad, as we may be losing someone with the same types of talents moving out of the area. So it'll be nice to have someone with this type of background to be a part of that council.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Arnault. Okay, next is and the last item for this evening, I think it'll go pretty quickly tonight, is consideration of resolution 2022-58. Approving an appointment to the Historic Committee. Tim.
Yeah, it's the same situation. I had the opportunity to meet with Bruce, Paula and I did as well. And he is an amazing individual that has quite a interesting background. He's been a judge appointed by Governor Levitt years ago. And he has a passion and it's very evident as you talk to him in historic items. He's an amazing individual and we had such a great conversation. And so I'm recommending that he be appointed as well. I think it'll be a great asset to the historic.
Remind me his name.
Bruce Levitt. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions, comments?
Well, the Historic Committee is already amazing, so it'll be even more amazing. So I'm really thrilled to hear about this.
They both arts and historic committee, great things.
Yeah. Absolutely, I agree as well.
I just got to say, he mentioned to us in the meeting that one of the, he's written his own personal history and multiple portions of his life. He said he loved that opportunity, he loves history. He says he wouldn't guarantee that his kids and his wife will ever read those, but it was really fun.
Oh,
Sounds like he's a perfect fit. So the last item for tonight will just be approval of the consent calendar, which will be the work session and business meeting minutes for October 18th. So we are grateful and honored to have with us today Pam Roberts, the general manager for Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling. So Pam, if you want to come up, we're looking forward. And looks like you also have Paul, yeah, Korth with you as well. Come on up, Paul.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us here tonight. And good to see you again, Mayor. And
Yeah, good
council.
to see you.
Yes. As always, man. So we're here to review the 2023 tentative budget that our board adopted last Monday on the 24th. And the proposed fee increases that are part of the budget as well. The last time I came before you to talk about a fee increase for the base fee, we were asking for an action item from you as a council to pass a resolution to approve the fee increase. We were reorganized as a local district just this year that under state statute, there is no requirement to have the municipalities vote for this. Your vote for approval or to say nay would be reside with trustee Scott Bracken as your representative for the city. But we want to make sure we get out to each of the municipalities to do an education process and let you all know for transparency reasons and for education of this budget and why we are proposing a fee increase. That's the big piece that I feel is important. And then just so you know, Paul Korth is our finance director. He joined us in January of 2019 and has been instrumental in taking a look at our costs, conducting analysis, answering the question of why. And I love that. I want to dig in and find out why things are happening and why costs are rising. He's got a great background in economy and economics, and I think that he'll go through that. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but I wanted to give an introduction. So thanks, Paul, for navigating. Starting off with the budget priorities, knowing that we've had, the last fee increase was in 2018. And the board proposed, and then each of the municipalities, all but one, agreed with a $2.25 per month fee increase for our residents. So at that time, we went to $17 a month. This year, knowing that costs were going up, we looked to try to make sure that we are capturing efficiencies everywhere we can. We did have the question from our board, what have you done over the past 5 years to absorb increased costs? So we ran through a lot of the efficiencies that we've been capturing with GPS systems on our trucks, implementing technology with GIS, forward-facing cameras, dash cameras on our trucks. And that has really helped to reduce the claims of liability. We, believe it or not, we have public that will blame us for something, some property damage or auto damage, when we actually didn't do it. So, yeah. So we experienced those, and we can provide the proof of why we're not at fault. And that does help with, what you can imagine, attorney costs, court costs. And even though we're fully insured with the Utah Local Governments Trust, that if we were at fault, or that cost would come back to us with our insurance premiums. So we are able to recoup cost savings there.
My favorite example of that was the video they showed us. Someone said, your truck beat up my minivan. I don't remember what it was, but as the video, as the truck went by, you could clearly see that the minivan was already damaged. And so that made it very easy to not file that claim through the trust and say you'll have to go through your insurer.
Yeah, very nice. So going into the budget, we as staff approached the board to say, what do you want to do? We're either going to need to raise rates, or we're going to need to reduce services. And each of the board members are residents that receives the services, which is wonderful. All 14 members at the table represent themselves as well as their neighbors in each of the municipalities. And they said, we want to keep the service level. We don't want to go back to biweekly recycling. The residents love it. We want to keep it. There's a need for it, a desire for it. We want to keep the seasonal container reservation, even though it's changed over the past 3 years because of staffing issues, and we'll need to keep the way we do it, the reservation going into 2023, understanding that if we were able to keep it staffed and have it back with 124 containers being delivered on the street, we would have been coming before you to talk about a fee increase before now. There was a cost savings there. I want to be transparent. If we could go back to that old way of delivering them in the streets, we would. We understand you as elected officials get pushback because we had to change. We're getting it as well. We're doing our best to try to provide a service for the bulk waste pickup. Understand this is bulk waste. We provide the weekly garbage by mandate, recycling weekly. This is a means for residents to get rid of their bulky waste. We also have the landfill vouchers that residents can pick up here at City Hall and haul their own truck or trailer load, or even if they have something they can fit in their car. If they want to take it out to the landfill, we'll pay for that cost of $15. One of the things that when we were out in Copperton a few weeks ago, they talked about the can repair and replacement. So I wanted to make sure that I touted that part of the monthly fee does cover if your can is old, it's leaking, or it's damaged, call us. We'll make sure we get it out and get it replaced within 7 to 10 days. Generally is our turnaround time.
There's a cost to that though, right?
There is, and it's absorbed. Well, we pay for it with the monthly fee. That's part of the monthly fee. Yeah. Going forward, we do have, well,
If it's smelling and you want it replaced, then yes, there's a cost.
yeah, thanks
If
for
you-
pointing that out. Yeah.
I mean, if it's damaged from normal wear and tear, then it's included with the
Okay,
monthly.
that's the disclaimer. Good.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Now, if it's stinky and you want a new one, then you can pay the $70 for a brand new, or you can pay a $45 for the refurbished can. So it's one that was used, we take it, we wash it, it's ready to go back out at a lower cost. The other thing is we have the central glass site, which I think you're familiar with, which is just down by right in front of your public works yard. Thanks, Matt, for letting us have it there. I know there's pros and cons for the residents. They love it, but at the same time, there's some question about the noise. So understanding we want to sustain those services, we talked to the board about fee scenarios, looking at our cash balances, which Paul will go through once we get there. And going through, you know, what would $2 per home per month get us and how long would that sustain? The board looking at with the cost increase, especially for 2023, went with a $2.50 per home per month increase, moving from the $17 per home per month to $19.50. That will go from, and as you know, we bill quarterly, and we do that to save money because the printing or any kind of electronic transactions cost money. So rather than going to a monthly billing process, we went quarterly. So right now, the quarterly fees are $51 a month. That'll move to $58.50. Understanding this fee increase will happen January 1, but we as residents, I'm in the district as well, will not actually see that until April when we get that first quarter bill. And so we'll see that $58.50. If you have other subscription programs, such as the ones I have, I'll see a higher dollar amount there. And then the annual cost is basically a $30 per year increase, to moving from $230 a year to $234 a year. This year have proposed a fee increase for the town of Brighton. That is in our district, the town of Brighton and Big Cottonwood Canyon. The town did incorporate in 2019, and then they took a seat at the board. We have not raised their fees since 2013. The reason there's a difference there is they have a different level of service. They don't receive any curbside service whatsoever, simply because it's very difficult to navigate through there, and their homes are well off the main roads. So we have central container sites as well as a garbage compactor up at the top of the loop, which is just across from the Silver Port parking lot. And so we're proposing $1.25 per home per month for them, for the full-time residents. And then there are seasonal residents that are up there only in the warmer months, and we're moving them up $1.25 as well per month. Other fees are going to be associated with trailer rental. I know I don't have that listed on there, but it'll be moving from 175 to 190 for a trailer rental for bulk. And that goes into you can reserve that online, rent it online. And then we have the green waste that will go from $45 to $55. And those are parked on your property for 4 days for you to load up, and we haul it off for you. We're always looking for continuous improvements with technologies and on our equipment. One of the things that we like to emphasize, especially going into 2023 with fuel costs rising. I mean, we experienced that this year going to the pumps with our vehicles. Diesel going into 2023, we've been told will be about $4 per gallon, if not higher. Our entire heavy equipment, except for our rear loaders, are CNG, compressed natural gas. We have $1 savings associated because of the price point between diesel being $4 a gallon and CNG being $2 a gallon. So you can imagine we purchased over 500,000 gallons of fuel. That was a calculation that I could do with even without Paul's help to make sure I was right on that. We'll save $1 million next year. And then we always want to find ways to serve more people with that seasonal container reservation. So if you don't have any questions on this piece, we'll move and I'll let Paul take over here and go through the numbers and cents.
Yeah, I have a couple questions that just about the Wasatch Front Waste District. How is in your purpose and priorities, is reduction of waste part of your purpose? Obviously, you talked about collection and that sort of thing. Can you share what kind of the front side, so to speak? At the back side is people throwing things into their waste receptacles. Can you help me understand what you do on the front side to encourage the way that people purchase things related to creating less waste to go into the landfills. And that's it.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question, because we do have a sustainability coordinator that we have in place since 2014, I think is when we created the position, or maybe it was 12. Councilmember Bracken might know memory more than I do. But we did put that position in, and we have McKenna Tuape, who has actually come and visited with the youth council to talk about sustainability education throughout the district and for Cottonwood Heights youth especially. We found that if we can educate the youth, then there's a little bit of maybe some pressure on parents to do the right thing, put the right thing in the blue bin, or if you want to get a green bin, making sure that we're you taking that those compostable materials out to the landfill to be reused. So there is a lot of education that goes into that. And you're right, we want to reduce what's going into the black can and reuse as much as possible. We do have the curbside glass program as well. That's a subscription. So subscription programs are really those that want to pay extra to be able to reuse those commodities. If that helps to answer some of the question, a lot of education goes out there in that manner. And then we have quality assurance inspectors that go around and inspect our cans for blue, green, and the glass, making sure that it's clean. No garbage is going in there.
Well, there's a lot of people in my district who are very interested in how they can do their part, and I would love to see more, community events. I know in August there was an event. Sadly, I was out of town and missed it. I know you have a table like that.
Yes.
Citizens understand, because in our day and age of so much single-use plastic, I think is a key thing that I'm getting a lot of input from my constituents, that they're interested in how can they be part of reducing the flow of plastics into our landfills and oceans. So
Yeah, it's a big issue. And we've found that with the educational push that we've done over the years, we've seen a reduction in those single-use thin film going into the blue container, but it still does happen. And we still see recycling as well. We would prefer not to see that unless it's in a paper bag. Yeah, education, and McKenna does go out to schools. So if you want to reach out to me, my contact information is there. We can set up for her to come out to schools in your district or anywhere within the city. We'd love to do that.
Okay.
You bet.
My name is Paul Korth. I'm the finance director of Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District. And Pam and I were talking, and we thought, let's put some of the major categories and show a history here on some of these expenses. And that's why we picked 2018, because the last fee increase was effective the first part of 2018, actually January 1st, 2018. And so just looking at these categories, these main categories, this is not all our expenses, but we wanted to go to the main categories and show trends in these. And on some of them, they fluctuate, and some haven't increased as much as you may think. But we still wanted to show that and kind of show a balanced view here. And so when we look at it, wages and overtime, 4.2 million in 2018. You can see that increase in 2021, 5.3 million. This year, we're estimating 5.6 million. And next year, the budget is 6.6 million. Now, I should say that's the budget. That's not necessarily, we won't max that out probably. That's if we had positions filled and all positions filled with employees. And we'd like to see more of that happen actually, but that is the budget amount. But you can just see there. And as far as our main category of employees is equipment operators. And for example, in 2018, the average starting salary was $17.34. This year through August, it was $24.19. And we're still having challenges attracting and retaining drivers. There's a lot of competition out there still. A little slowdown starting in construction, but still there's a lot of demand for CDL drivers. And so that's been a challenge for us and continues to be. Our board has allowed us to increase wages and make adjustments the past few years, and that's helped. But unfortunately, the way things are going, it's just like you're always kind of on a treadmill as far as trying to catch up to the market and where the market's at. I mean, it's been challenging. But we'll see what happens there, as far as inflation goes and the economy goes. It's interesting. I read a lot and I've decided the more I read, I don't know if anyone knows for sure as far as timing of things. And I think we just have to be flexible. And I say that to our board. I mean, we really have to be flexible on this. The next category is fuel. You can see where we actually went down in 2019, went from 971,000 to about 869,000. Stayed pretty consistent in 2020, and then it started to increase in 2021. Increased fairly significant in 2022, up to almost 1.1 million. And we anticipate that will increase some next year. But that's another one. How do you project that? We feel like, we talked to different sources and we feel like it's going to increase a little, but there's just a lot of factors that go into that. Maintenance is another area that we've seen increases over the time period from 2.6 million in 2018 to we're budgeting 3.4 million for 2023. And that's been a lot of, again, their labor, their overhead has increased, but also just getting parts. We talked to them quite a bit, and the parts backlog and getting parts and then the expense of them has just shot up significantly the last year. And they don't see that subsiding anytime in the next few months.
So I was just saying, part of that has also been with the interruption to supply chains and stuff. We haven't been able to unload older trucks and buy the new ones right now. How long are we waiting for a
Yeah.
truck? Like
We'll
14?
talk about that here in just a
Okay,
minute,
well.
but yeah, that's coming up. But we've had orders for trucks, but it's been challenging.
You're kind of forced to keep older equipment, which then
Yeah.
has more
There's
maintenance.
ramifications there too.
So,
Yeah. The disposal fees, when we look there, really not too much increase. A little bit of an increase, 3.9 million in 2018. We're budgeting 4.2 in 2023. Part of that's our refuse tons have decreased just a little. And then we also established an agreement with Salt Lake County. They gave us a discount if we take tons of refuse to the landfill versus a transfer station. And that saved us significantly too. We still get a much lower rate if we go to the landfill. Now there's some costs with that. You still have the mileage, but you need to look at it to where we're picking it up, and that has benefited us overall. So the next one's recycling, and this is really volatile. 2018, 900,000 went up to 1.3 million in 2019, then decreased to 330,000 in 2021. It has increased the last couple of months, and so that's one of those areas that it's based on commodities markets and a lot of different commodities markets: paper, cardboard, plastics, aluminum. And those of you familiar with commodities markets, they change significantly. It's amazing and kind of fascinating to me to watch them, and just the values and underlying values can change. A lot of money is made and lost quickly in some of those markets. So,
Does much of our refuse, does it go very far? I mean, does it get shipped long distances? I know
the garbage or the recycling?
the recycling, I know that there's a lot of different things that get recycled. I'm interested in, does that also play, other than just the commodity market changing, how far it's being shipped to be recycled, or is it recycled all right in Utah?
But,
I think
it's not all recycled.
yeah,
you know.
they sort it here, and then I think it goes to different markets. We have 2 recycling vendors, and they're both tied in, or they are international companies. And so I think they sort it here, and then they look at markets and where they feel like they can get the best price for this, and watch those markets pretty close. So my understanding, Pam can correct me, is we sort it here. It may go to different markets.
A lot of the paper product used to go to China,
Yeah,
and then they changed their rules on what they would accept. They would used to take stuff that was somewhat contaminated, and they took that almost, and so all of a sudden, I mean, we used to pay what we maxed out at over $65 a ton for we were paying more for recycling than just garbage disposal or regular waste.
2019.
But we kept the processes in place because we knew there would be other times. Now we're down to about 15 a ton.
No, it shot up again.
Okay, well, see, my data is 60 days old or
Yeah,
30 days
I'm
old.
sorry. I should have updated trustee Brecken, because he had an appointment the last board meeting, so The recycling rates right now have reached up close to 2019 rates where we were paying $90 a ton.
Oh,
We're inching towards that, and there's a reason, and I went through a lot of the explanation, and that is that one, the markets have changed. There's a lot of supply now for paper and cardboard. There's a lot of backlog that's happening with paper. The good news is there's domestic mills of paper mills that have opened up here because of what happened in China in 2018, 2019. So mills opened up here to try to
has the
help.
one that they proposing out?
Utah County, they're still waiting for the land to secure the land. So that one's still on hold, but we've been told that there's international, Cellmark is an international partner that's invested here locally. So we're hoping that will open.
We used to get paid for recycling
We did. It was a
way back in the
Well,
dark ages of,
Last year, we
Big
got
swing.
paid just a month or two.
Yeah,
So-
we were happy.
it's crazy.
So yeah, the prediction is it's gonna stay high cost for us now because of those markets slowing down. And just so you know how the pricing index works for both vendors, and I hope this doesn't bore you all, but we start with a base fee of what it costs them per ton to process recycling. So let's say it starts at $100, which is about the average between the vendors is $100 per ton. How that goes down for us as far as what we pay or what revenue we might receive is what do those commodities fetch out there on the market? So metals, plastics, including the water bottles, the laundry detergent, milk jugs, those are still fetching a nice dollar. Soup cans, I mean, we love to see metals into although they need to be the aluminum cans or the soup cans or things of that nature, not a frying pan into the blue bin. That's a scrap metal. You can haul it to one of the vendors and get some money yourself. We'd appreciate that. So we do see the dollar amount start to go down based on the commodities market. Why it's going back up and why we're paying more is because of the cardboard and paper not having as high a dollar of value. And just so you know, the majority of what's in that blue can is cardboard and paper. However, those markets are expected to rebound in the spring, but we do know we're gonna have 6 months of tough love.
Do you all still give municipalities grades on the percentage that you get the correct amount into the recycling bin?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that.
We have a
Yes.
contamination rate.
Yeah, contamination rate. So
Oh, my date on this isn't 60 days old.
Cottonwood Heights is actually below I should say better than the average.
Okay.
So the average district-wide is about 27% contamination rate. So 93% is recyclable clean, which is really good nationwide. You can see up to the 35-40 percentile. So I think as far as district municipalities are doing well. Cottonwood Heights, I think your last sample score was below 20% contamination. So you all are doing great. We appreciate it. Keep it up. Rah, rah. Appreciate that. Keeping it clean.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did that answer? I could talk trash for all day. Sorry, I have to throw that in there.
Or motorcycles.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so when we look, those are our main costs, and I think, I think most of you experience some of these same things as far as labor and fuel and those type of things. It's not just us, but we do feel that. The cost of a side load truck up here, this is a little older version and it's changed, but this gets to what was mentioned previously. The cost of the side load truck in 2018 was $313,000. In 2021, it was $328,000. This year in 2022, it was actually less than $351,000, but our vendor came back to us and said, we can't do it for that cost. You need to bump up the cost. So we go to our board, we get approval. We ordered our 8 side load trucks and they came to us in September and said, you're not going to get them, sorry. And so even at that 351, we are not going to get any side load trucks. We asked them about next year and it's actually 425,000 is it projected. And that's something we've just gotten information on in the last couple of weeks. And so the cost of a side load truck's gone up almost 100,000 in 2 years. And that's if we can fortunate enough to get them. And so there's been a challenge there. One thing we have done is we started to keep some of our trucks older even before this, because we wanted to look and see what's maintenance. And with the cost of the new ones, is there a benefit to keeping some of them older? And so we've been trying that and looking at the maintenance. And that really helped us out when this happened because we still have enough trucks to service everyone. they are getting older, and so we'll watch that and look at the maintenance, but there's a trade-off there, maintenance costs versus a cost of a new one. And we're looking at that right now, but the side load trucks, it's been a challenge, and hopefully we can get some next year. But it's, when you look at that, almost up 100,000, that's about a 30% increase in 2 years. And so we're really feeling that increase and seeing it. But this is just, it just shows the change. And then just on these increases and the projected increase, when we did the trucks, it came in at about 3.5 million, the projected increase. And then it was about $41 per year per house. And this is over 2018 to 2023. So it does include that increase from before, but we're trying to stay ahead of it as far as these are our increased costs. And we've used up that increase we had last time, and we need to go out and request an increase at this point in time. With that said, we do take serious. I mean, we realize a lot of people struggle. It's a challenging time. And, you know, there's a lot of costs increasing too. And so we do realize that, but we just feel like now it's the time we need to do this. So any questions on any of the costs so far?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna say the 225 over the 5, let's say this one from 18 to 23 is 45 cents a month per year, which isn't a huge amount. It's just whether you take it in one chunk or you're taking some smaller bites.
Correct. Yeah.
And this one is very much a health and safety issue for cities, because places you read about that don't have their garbage picked up and taken away and properly disposed of, it's not a healthy place to live.
Okay, we go on to the next slide, please. And so this shows our cash and investment balances and projections. The kind of the grayish blue is actual numbers, and really the number we want to look at is third line from the bottom, the ending cash and investment balance. And so this has the revenues, it shows proceeds from truck sales, our expenses, an adjustment for depreciation expense, but we're projecting out and trying to estimate what our cash will be. And so last year, at the end of the year, it was 9.5 million. We do include our investments because they're very liquid. We have access to them. We can get at them really quick if we need those funds. But looking across there, you can see the decrease. I did go back and update this. The estimated amount, the cash balance was 7.3 million at the end of 2022. And I've gone back and redone that, and it's going to be up around 10 million. And the reason for that change is we did not buy those 8 trucks, and we're not paying cash on them that we thought we were going to. And that was about 2.8, 2.9 million. So our cash balance at the end of this year, our cash and investment balance will look better than we projected and estimated, but it's really due to the fact that we didn't get the trucks that we ordered. And I think this is the first time, at least since I've been there, where we've ordered trucks, and we ordered them way in advance. I mean, it was, I think, about a year ago or over a year ago, and we ordered them. And so the cash and investments look a little better than this, but it's really due to the fact we didn't get the trucks we ordered, which isn't a great factor for us. We'd rather have the truck. And so I don't know if there's any questions on this part as far as cash. Like I said, I feel like most of us, just being alive, you know what's going on with the markets and the economy, and hopefully things will slow down. I don't see how some of these costs can continue to go the way they go, but we'll see what happens as far as the timing of it.
No, I think the key is to keep the drivers in the trucks so they can keep getting the garbage out. I mean, it's amazing what for all of us to just have to, we just put it in a can, the can goes out to the curb and it just disappears. And it's wonderful. We're not hauling it all out to you can imagine what 86,000 households all driving out to the dump every week by themselves. What a nightmare that would be. So,
Well, I mean.
Is that the last? Oh,
So
sorry.
I would only chime in that, are you finding you're having any problems with retention or attracting additional the drivers that you need? Is that, I mean, we just watched UTA go through a dramatic route decrease based on their inability to attract and retain drivers. So to your point about the CDL, do you have a plan in place to be able to keep a force that's necessary? Or?
Yeah, we do the best like we can to set a culture that people want to come to work. I mean, that's been my goal since 2007 when I started, is to create a place where people want to come to work, meaning that they'll stay. Unfortunately, that dollar does speak volumes, especially to a younger family, that they're only wanting that dollar. They may not see the long-term benefit of benefits and retirement and URS benefits. So we really tout the dollar amount that's associated with vacation, sick leave accrual. What does that mean dollar amount wise related to the salary offer that we give you or what you make currently? The way we've been able to retain also is because our board has been generous and granted us those salary market adjustments
So your entry level is $24 an hour.
based on experience. So we now, just last year, I think it was, we implemented pay for years of experience. District-wide, that phase 3 district-wide came in this year, but drivers, we wanted to get to them first because 63 of our 95 now FTEs somewhere around in there, are driver positions, frontline. And so that is the majority of our staffing. So we always look to those positions, especially because they're so desired. And there's a nationwide shortage of CDL drivers. We see it in the markets when we can't get the groceries. And we can't get the parts for the vehicles and et cetera. So we had a salary market adjustment in 2020. Which is why you see a jump in the salaries there. I consult with a compensation consultant who makes recommendations to the board. She goes out and does an analysis of all the salaries out there. And then coming into 2022, again, for the drivers, and then compensation for 2023, there was another thorough market analysis with significant adjustments. As you saw with the previous one, it goes from up to a 1.1 increase, $1 million increase in salaries. That's not just for the wages, but it's also for the we added 2 new positions this year for safety and to help us with gathering data and reporting so we can have real-time information so we can react quicker, pivot quicker, and become more efficient. And then also we have 3 new driver positions that we're adding next year, hoping we can recruit and retain. Right now, we have 5 driver vacancies and we have no movement on.
And what is your top wage scale for your most senior drivers?
Oh, it tested my memory. I love it. So it depending on the position, a lead equipment operator can get close to $28 a month, or excuse me, $28 an hour. I'm thinking equipment operator Paul is around.
But the actual drives is more like 28.
Well, the actual driver, I think, is more like 26, 27 at the max. 27 max.
Thank you. I should.
I mean, the CDLs, the competition are public works people,
Yeah.
they're construction jobs.
Right.
I mean, there's just a huge demand of people that
Yeah,
of jobs that can do that.
We are not. When we separated from Salt Lake County in 2013, the employee association came in and made a recommendation to the board that they didn't see a reason to do that. That, you know, they looked at how I manage and they said, you don't need to do that. You know, fair and equitable treatment is there. And if ever there was a question, then they could reevaluate.
That's why Pam's not allowed to retire.
So is this the last slide?
There's one that just tells next step. Thank
Oh,
you,
okay.
Mayor. So the
Okay.
next one is going
We'll see a bill
through.
in April.
As I mentioned, the board tentatively adopted the tentative budget last Monday. Now there'll be a public hearing. I wanted to make sure we get that out there to residents so that they know. Public comment will be open November 14th, which is a Monday at 6 p.m. is when that will take place. It'll be available in person at our location. Our building office is right there, the address. And then there'll also be a WebEx address that will be pushed out on the agenda. If people want to participate online, to give comment to the budget. And then my contact information is there. I welcome anybody to call me or email me. I'm happy to answer questions from anyone. Even somebody that's upset.
me driving down the freeway.
That's right.
Well, Pam and Paul, thank you.
Yeah.
We, you know, this is waste removal is definitely a take for granted service unless it's not going well, then people get to realize, but thank you for all you do and we appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Just for on a future agenda, probably in the next couple of months, we could probably take 10 or 15 minutes and discuss the scrap program and the trailer rental. I've got a couple of ideas that might work for Cottonwood Heights.
Happy to do that. Great.
But we'll need to get that plan put in place before they set the whole process up.
Okay,
I think that might help do things up here.
I'd be interested in
great. So item 4 on our agenda today is a legislative report. So we've asked our city lobbyists, Brian Allen and Chantel Nate, come on up, guys, and then Greg Curtis, who I think is going to join us over Zoom if he's not.
He's there. Okay, he's there. Can we just give an intro into this?
Yes.
So council, as they are getting prepared.
I start with Greg. It sounds like he's having more fun than we are.
Okay.
Let him get it over with.
Okay, so let me just give an intro into this. We are preparing obviously for the next legislative session. There's been a lot of work, especially with the Legislative Policy Committee that Councilmember Newell and Mayor and I have been involved with the league. Brian has been attending those as well. A lot of issues will be coming up pertaining to housing development. Short-term rentals is a big issue, and I'm still serving on the subcommittee related to that. So we're just starting to gear up. We want to talk a little bit about some of the issues that both all 3 of our lobbyists see coming up. And then also we've included in the packet just a draft document that we can definitely fine tune on different policy considerations and funding priorities that we're looking at. Over the last few years, we've looked at urban trail networks, increased funding for the Bonneville shoreline. We're always interested in funding for roads and transportation, but also the P25 radio conversion is something that there's additional funding that's needed. Related to policies, we're obviously always concerned about the distribution of sales tax, and then short-term rental issues, and then transportation policies for the canyons. Those are some of the priorities that we've outlined. We definitely today, and as we move towards January for the legislative session, want to have further conversations. But if it's okay, maybe we can start with Greg since he's here and talk about funding items that he's been looking at. Greg, can you hear us? You're on mute, I think.
I'm sorry, Tim, are you talking?
There we go.
Oh, never mind.
Hi, Greg.
Hi. Yeah, sorry about the confusion there. Yes, I heard all of that, Tim.
So as far
Is
as
that
funding,
echoing?
will you give us some thoughts related to funding on some of these issues with urban trails and also other items that you're looking at for this upcoming session?
Yes. Let's see. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to, I was getting a reverberation, and so I wanted to, I'm not very technologically adept, but anyway, here we are. Well, obviously, you probably saw the same governor's announcement in regards to urban trails. And to be honest with you, I was as surprised by that as anybody. So I can't give you much more than what was covered in the newspaper, but it looks like there's going to be a significant push with some of the one-time monies to try and address connecting communities in trails, urban trails. And so outside of that announcement, I don't know.
Greg, could you maybe speak up just a little bit? I don't know if there's a mic. It's not
The
great.
other funding issues is there is a significant amount of one-time money currently. UDOT, the oddity is for the first time in my history of being involved with them, UDOT is saying they're tapped out on state projects, and so they're saying we don't want a whole bunch more money and a whole bunch more projects. We still have the overall policy economy as UDOT being the #1 funded state transportation system in the country, but local governments are still kind of left out of the loop when they talk about these significant regional roads that connect communities, and that's a continuing battle or discussion. The fifth quarter, there's been a lot of discussion around the fifth, what I'll refer to as the fifth quarter, but it's essentially an authorization that was given at the county level to impose an additional 0.2, and that 0.2, the authorization period expires as of July 1st, I believe, 2023. There's discussion on whether or not they reauthorize that. That has to be imposed by the county council. And it has not generally up to this point had support. So there might be some attempts to tweak that. Everybody, and as it's been discussed, everybody has different ideas how that should be done and who it should go to. Some are discussing distributing that just like they do the fourth quarter, which sends money directly to transit, county, and cities. But I don't think there's any solid plan around that thus far. And lastly, there is ongoing discussion in the what's referred to as the county, the first class highway fund. They paid off some significant, they're paying off significant bonds, and as that moves forward, there's discussions as to how that money is going to be spent. And that's the one that I believe a couple of years ago they distributed. I think Cottonwood Heights gets $400,000 a year, I believe, for 15 years. There'll be some more monies coming in into that fund. So those are some of the issues that are being discussed right now.
Questions, comments? Greg?
Here,
So can you hear us okay, Greg?
yes, I can hear you now. Yeah, sorry, I had to.
Well, certainly one of the things on the mind of the people in Cottonwood Heights District 4 is the advancement of the Wasatch Boulevard expansion through Cottonwood Heights, so State Road 210 at Wasatch Boulevard, within phase 1 of the WFRC's 2023 to 2030 is phase 1 of their 2050 RTP. And in looking at their models, I am still not seeing support in the data and their projections for the need to widen that road to 5-lane, which is their priority with a phased in 2-lane imbalance. And I'm interested in understanding why that particular regional road has been made a priority over the need going on throughout, especially the west side of Salt Lake Valley. Do you care to make any comment on that?
I'm not, no, I mean, candidly, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Transportation Commission and UDOT that prioritizes those projects and the methodology that they use. I'm squarely on record already in different Transportation Commission meetings, bringing up frustration in regards to how that is done. So I don't.
Greg, can I ask you a question? Do you feel comfortable understanding our city's priorities and what we are looking for to get funding and grants that are available? Do you feel like you're getting that information consistently enough to understand where we want to look for help?
Generally, yes. I mean, yes, Tim and I think communicate, and I generally feel like I have a pretty good idea on things that I'm looking at. I know some of the standard, we received some money for Bonneville Shoreline Trail. over the years, quarter to quarter funding, different roads. The state roads, because Cottonwood Canyon, Cottonwood Heights is a major focus of state infrastructure associated with the environmental document and the gondola. And that I would honestly say, there are opinions that range all over the board. I don't know exactly what, if somebody asked me to articulate the city position, I don't know exactly if I would know honestly how I would do that.
Yeah, and that's a little bit outside the scope of what I was asking. So just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So we got a call from one of our former mayors saying, hey, there's a grant out there that I think you ought to look at. I know it's something that the city's looking to do. We ended up applying for that grant, and I think we have a really good chance of getting it. It's about $1 million. But and I asked him at the time, I said, hey, is this something that I need to be on top of? And he said, no, your lobbyists need to do that. And so just to maybe, I feel like maybe we maybe need to do a better job of making sure what is on our horizon with you, so that we don't miss something that maybe we didn't have somebody call us on. So maybe in the future we spend some time understanding priorities and what, we don't want to miss out on something, is what I'm trying to get at, that is out there that because we just didn't apply. So
is this the grant through GOEO in regards to water projects and
no, it's in regards to housing property purchase.
It's through GOEO though. It's through GOEO. It was for really a housing element and opportunity for property acquisition for that. So
okay.
Just came out about a month and a half ago, and we applied.
Okay. No, honestly, on that one, on housing, then yes,
and I don't expect you to, if you don't
I
understand
missed that,
what we're doing,
so,
then
yeah.
anyway, yeah. So,
Yeah.
great.
No, I'm familiar with some of them through GOEO involving there were been a lot of different grant programs discussed and funded and through GOEO, especially with ARPA dollars. A lot of them have some restrictions in regards to local or rural communities and smaller communities. There was some, and so I thought that was one of them you were talking about, but the one here involving housing, when I was not familiar with. So.
Okay. Well, great, thank you. So should we turn it over to Brian and Chantel?
So thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. So the 2023 legislative session is really just around the corner. There are already 312 pre-filed files open. They're title only. We don't have language for a lot of them yet. We're tracking 113 that would have either direct or peripheral impact on the city. So that's a third of the bills that have been filed, more than a third, a little bit. So, and the primary, I guess the themes that I would focus on are, one is property tax. I think when people got their property tax bills this year, there's a little bit of sticker shock. They were significantly higher for most people. And that has caused some legislators to get calls from constituents and open bill files to try to address some of the things that they're hearing about from constituents. How far any of those get, I don't know. We do know that water is another huge issue. Water infrastructure, water development, water conservation. A lot of bills around that. There was a bill in committee this last month at interim dealing with a prohibition on using property tax to pay for water infrastructure. And I think the idea is they're trying to shift it to user fees so that people using water feel the pain and will conserve because of the economics of it. So there's a lot of that kind of thing going on. The league is likely would oppose that bill. The other big issue is housing. Housing is, continues to be a problem that vexes especially our Wasatch Front communities. Cost of housing is expensive. So it's still a huge homeless crisis. And there are a lot of proposals out there. The league has a short-term rental resolution. I think you've probably seen that. There's been a lot of discussion on short-term rentals. I know we've not seen language on bills, but there have been some conceptual things floating around that I think would be positive for the city if they pass. So we're keyed in on those. And then there are obviously always a number of law enforcement issues that you know may or may not really impact the city. It's hard. We don't know because their bills are short title, so they're pretty vague and broad. That could mean almost anything. So we're trying to reach out to sponsors and figure out what they're doing. Haven't heard anything too earth-shattering so far. But it's just going to be a very busy session. There are a lot of issues that I think could be, have local impact that we're gonna have to deal with.
May I comment on the
Yeah.
short-term rental? I know, Bill, I know that Cameron deal with the league. He emailed me last night. They had a big meeting this morning and I haven't heard about it, but he wanted some input related to some of the things that we are looking at. Obviously, it focuses around enforcement, right? And giving opportunities for cities to enforce, but also looking at other options related to helping cities with making sure that sales tax is created on those that are approved and a variety of different things. So that's moving even today with some of the meetings that they were having.
Yeah, we've seen a number of bills on transit room tax and making sure that's enforceable. That means if there's the gambit, it runs the gambit. And I mean, obviously there's this pressure of, you want to allow people the right to use their property the way they want to use it within limits. But you also want to make sure you're controlling things that are happening in cities and neighborhoods so that you're not infringing on other people's rights. So there's a balancing act they're trying to deal with. I think everyone recognizes that when they stripped away the city's enforcement of short-term rentals some years back, that was a mistake. It really has created a lot of problems, and I think every neighborhood is struggling with unapproved short-term rentals are just popping up without any conformity to city regulation or code, without paying any taxes. And it's a problem. And I think, the Gardner study and other studies clearly indicated that short-term rentals have an impact on affordable housing. And so there's a lot of pressure right now to kind of get our head around at the legislative level, at least get their heads around short-term rentals and what that should really look like. And I can give you some tools and some authority back to the city to kind of regulate how they happen, where they happen, and also giving the enforcement mechanisms to be able to go out after people who aren't doing them fairly. So we think that's going to be the story in the legislature this year for a change, which would be positive. That'd be positive for cities. And I know the league's working real hard on it. We're working on, with various, I've had meetings with Representative Bennion and others on it. There's a lot of people talking about it. So it'll be interesting to see, how far it gets. I mean, there are some big issues in the legislature that can consume a lot of oxygen. The Dobbs decision, the Supreme Court's kicking that back to the states. I mean, there's already been a number of bills filed around abortion issue, gender identity issues. I mean, there's just a whole host of things that don't impact us, but take a lot of oxygen out of the air up there. And how much, how that impacts how much of this other stuff gets done remains to be seen, because we just don't know the full impact. Because if there are 312 public bills, there's probably at least that many more that are not public that we don't know about. And typically in a session, you'll see a couple of thousand bill files open. I suspect this session could be busier and have some new people, so that'll maybe slow it down a little bit, but we also don't know where those new people's heads are at yet, because we don't know who they're going to be for sure. So we don't know who's going to get elected next week. So that'll be a busy night for us. So we're watching all of that, but there are a number of issues. We're trying to get feedback from sponsors on what their concepts are behind the bills they have open that we can see. And like I said, so far we haven't seen anything that's too crazy, but obviously there are some big things. We are also doing research on grant opportunities. got that request, and we're trying to subscribe to different feeds from different granting organizations to make sure we're noticed when grants become available. So we'll get you a list of what we see out there within the next couple of weeks.
Right.
But it's gonna be, I think it'll be a busy session.
So one thing that, this isn't earth shattering, but we, land use is obviously at the top of our list, so. Any land use zoning, for anybody that doesn't know, a bill passed last year took away land use authority from municipalities around transit stations, and so, usually when that starts, they'll go for more the next time.
Well, there's a bill already out there filed for transit zones, so. I mean, they're making it, I don't know what it's gonna, I haven't had a chance to talk to that sponsor yet. We'll try to figure out if they're making another run at taking more authority away. But clearly, yeah, this legislature has been in a mode the last several years to really kind of undermine cities' land use authority, and to get that at the state level has a lot to do with using leadership and how that dynamic works. But we continue to work with the league on those issues, and we'll try to do everything we can to push back on them.
A couple other things that I've seen pop up is Representative Birkeland has a bill titled Affordable Housing Zoning Amendments. We flagged that one. Once language comes out, we
Affordable
will,
housing zoning.
Yeah, so it'll be a bill to, like, if you're doing some kind of development, probably say something about you have to have X number of affordable housing units or whatever. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we typically see around affordable housing, that they want to impose some sort of a quota in your zoning law.
and Andreg also has a bill file open for affordable housing. The other thing that came up at the last interim day was Senator Buxton was concerned because he stated he was aware of 2 cities that had intentionally filled up areas that were intended as a transportation corridor. So they're also looking at ways to protect transportation corridors. And so for Representative Christopherson said that he was working on a bill for corridor preservation. And so we're not totally sure what that's going to look like, because he said it wasn't ready to distribute. So
Yeah, that stems from, obviously there's identified transportation corridors. There's generally opposition to those. So some areas have used development of those transportation corridors to help push the road in a different direction. They're looking at a way to kind of preserve that right, keep that corridor available. So it'd be like a development moratorium or something on that identified corridor, which, I mean, that it's a tricky thing. I don't know how they're going to get that done. I don't know, but we hear these ideas. You don't know how much of actually bear fruit ultimately, but we certainly have to try to keep an eye on them. So it should be a fun session. We're looking forward to it. It'll be a lot of fun. And then just on a side note, I'm having a total knee replacement on November 16th, which is interim day. So Chantel's going to cover that day for us. And then I'll probably be out of pocket for a few days anyway. I'm hoping I bounce back quick. We'll see how it goes. But I need to get it done soon enough before the session. So I actually walk around up there on that hard floor and get stuff done. So
our
it should be a fun Thanksgiving.
5K on Thanksgiving, you'll be ready for it, Sam.
I might be able to walk it slowly, but I won't be actually running it. So it should be fun.
Okay. Any final issues or questions for Greg or?
We're trying to get you back on time, but we're still a little over, so.
That's okay. We appreciate it. Well, thanks for all you do, and we appreciate your willingness to look over and help us. And
well, we love working with you. Thank you for all you do. I mean, you guys have a much harder job than I have. So I just have to deal with legislators. You have to deal with everybody else.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
I know how much fun they are.
Okay, item 5 is our staff reports, and the first item is going to be a sleds ordinance update, kind of a continuation of what we did last week as far as educating the council on sleds. And we'll maybe make this a little interactive if we have any questions.
Yeah, please stop.
So if there's things that we need to discuss while you're going through, we'll talk about it. So we'll turn the time over to you. Go ahead, sorry.
Did you mention Councilmember Peterson's here with us? He's just online.
Okay, yep, I see his beautiful picture up there now. Yeah, so thank you.
I'm here.
Councilman Peterson. Thank you.
I'm here. We're gonna give Brian Allen 2 days recovery. I think it's good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we talked through this last time, and the way this presentation is laid out is just going through, this is a summarized version of the changes being made section by section. Again, the sensitive lands ordinance exists today. A lot of this is just very technical update, incorporating new best practices since the last time, we did this ordinance exercise in 2015 or 2016. But certainly step in and ask questions. If I can't answer them today, I'll take note and make sure to get an answer out to the whole council. I left off last time at development standards and control, so I'm going to just start from that point today. I also did want to mention, I'm hoping to get through most of the rest of the summary today, and then tee up a more in-depth conversation about the riparian ordinance standards at the next work session, because that is in here by reference today, but all of the standards are new because they don't currently exist. So I'm just gonna roll through and like you said, interrupt me anytime. We've added some updates to the minimum acceptable qualifications of consultants preparing studies for property owners. We've actually just made them a little stricter, a little less up for interpretation, especially with the very technical studies like fault studies, geologists and engineers doing those technical studies. We've added, enhanced language that they have to have appropriate degrees, and we've clarified 5 years of experience in the field, and they will have to justify that as a developer comes in with an engineer that they're using for these types of studies. And then other professionals for other studies like a groundwater study or something a little bit lesser where they're just doing a ground sample or something like that. The 5-year thing isn't there. The language is actually similar to what it is today, but they do have to show they're qualified to do the work. Procedure and preliminary activities. This is the section of the ordinance that deals with, when an ordinance or a hazard is known or suspected on a property. The process of getting through, okay, we think this hazard's here, to identifying this work needs to be done to study it. This is the whole pre-scoping land disturbance process covered by this section. There were originally changes proposed to this, and as the result of public input at the Planning Commission, was actually a preference to leave it as it is today. And when we've gone back and agreed with that, it's pretty good today. This is a very simplified version, but everything from a pre-scoping meeting to a scope of work letter to a concept plan to final land disturbance permit approval. And it also includes detailed requirements for those meetings, survey, staking, bond requirements, site inspections, reclamation, revegetation, stuff like that. So again, this is staying as it is today. In addition to this, we've created a policy, an internal policy that we can certainly incorporate by reference in the code that documents this in a flow chart form that says, okay, they're going to come in, they're going to get this letter, we're going to send a letter back out. Everything's going to be documented, and the final land disturbance permit will be documented on a piece of paper that's available for review.
Beautiful.
Geologic hazard section, we have maps. This is just a section of the code that references, maps where fault hazard zones where faults are either known or suspected. Again, we've just updated those maps, as you'll see here in a second, based on most recent Utah Geologic Survey data. And then we've also added clarification that city maps contain the official hazard study areas, but additional areas may be eligible based on, other data that's out there. So it doesn't apply only in the hazard zone, but it's a good guideline. Okay, that segues into the actual map. And this is kind of it shows better on the TV screen than the projector, but this shows the existing sensitive lands overlay kind of study zone with the new one. The existing one today is the pink or the purple lines there. And this is basically all of the different hazards that the ordinance regulates, from groundwater to faults to steep slopes to liquefaction to everything else. They all have study zones. This is all of those combined. So what's in the hazard area on the southwest side of the city might be very different, or is very different than the hazard city area on the east side of the city. One's groundwater, one's steep slopes and faults. The development process changes substantially, but it's all regulated by this ordinance.
So who determined this?
So this is based on a lot of data. So the fault and fault related information is from UGS, official documentation out there of known and suspected faults. Groundwater, we've got FEMA information that plays into this, and Salt Lake County flood control and other sources for groundwater and flooding hazards and things like that. And we basically have all these different maps for all of them, and we put them all together into one overlay.
So what's the legend that goes with these colors? Is the blue
Well,
riparian and the
no.
purple?
No, it's all just hazard. The purple is what it is today. The blue is what's proposed in this amendment. So if this
map isn't actually in the thing, this is just.
This is just showing a before and after. If this ordinance amendment is approved by the council, the blue will take the place over the purple. And it's just the expansion of these areas, again, is based on new data that we have, also based on annexation. So the last time the maps were done, that southern portion of the city, that's all sensitive lands down there. It just wasn't covered originally because that wasn't part of the city originally. Same thing off of Creek Road with that little the little cutout there that annexed in.
But is the portion on the west side predominantly riparian and not seismic?
It's groundwater, source protection, there are some slopes over there, but yeah, not seismic over there. There's some liquefaction. It's all water related hazards on that south and west portion.
All I see is that Sean and I aren't hazardous.
Well, yeah. Now that is it's a joke, but that's a good point. Is if there are isolated areas in the middle of the city, like with steep slopes or hazards, this ordinance will still regulate those. We can still identify those as needing to be studied. They're just not in the overlay. The ordinance also has individual maps for each hazard. So this is all of them put together. The final version that you'll see will have individual maps for all of them, so you can see the breakdown. Okay. This is a kind of a technical change, but this is just clarification on basically building permits that come in that have to use this ordinance, but the lots were created prior to this ordinance, and it gives us some direction there for basically things that site and structural engineers have to disclose. Basically, the concept here is if, say, there's an entitled lot that's in a very hazardous area, and maybe we wouldn't approve the lot if it came in for subdivision entitlement today, but it already exists. There's some
Hill subdivision.
There's a lot of areas in the city that probably fall into that. There's a lot of things that need to be done and disclosed by the project's engineer before we move forward.
Strictly just lots, or would that go to existing homes as well?
Well, this would be new development on lots, but the ordinance itself would still apply to homes that want to expand or redevelop that are already existing.
But a sale of a current home wouldn't necessarily have to have all those disclosures. Is that what you're saying?
No. So what we've seen before is where we see development or a lot split or something like that, we will require a disclosure on the subdivision plat. This is going to cover lots that exist already that don't have that disclosure that go to build. This will all become public information in the the permit file for whatever structure there is. Sometimes a good example of this is Giverny, the ridgeline lots. We actually, there's a note on the subdivision plat there, but then we also require them to record hazard disclosures on specific lots. So that pulls on title reports. So that practice would continue. This is, just kind of more on top of that disclosure from the developer side as well. And then we have some new changes. A lot of this is very technical, so I'll go fairly quickly, but to how hazard reports are submitted and reviewed. We have added new language specifying that a field review by the city is required basically for any site work, that whether that be fault trenches, test pits, drilling, etc. We typically do this anyways. It just wasn't directly codified and it is now. We've added requirements for all reports to meet something called the UGS Circular 128, which is just an industry accepted document for preparing these reports. Very technical and jargony, but it's kind of the gold standard that's being used right now. Again, added a requirement that reports be prepared in accordance with, state requirements for professionals. And that if a final hazard, or if a final report indicates that no hazards exist on a property, the city may revise hazard maps accordingly. We don't have to, we can still leave the hazard overlay there, but if it's,
You
maybe,
started to get a whole bunch that said there were no hazards around here, you may.
maybe it's something up in this area here, and maybe that line's not accurate. There's not really a hazard there. That's an example. I don't know, but it gives us an option. It requires all reports to include written stamp certification from professionals that certify the following things. That the reports meet the requirements of the ordinance. The proposed development doesn't present an unreasonable or unacceptable risk. Again, we're asking them to kind of step up and directly certify that the work they're doing, analyzing hazards on a lot or a development, they find meet the standards of the ordinance and are reasonably mitigate risk. There's also one in here that we think is a good thing, actually, where private property owners, the engineers they're using not only have to meet the the education and experience standpoint, but they have to have a certain amount of liability insurance. Not that the city would collect on that, but it basically ensures that firms or consultants doing the studies are reputable, professional companies that carry appropriate liability insurance. That wasn't in there before, but that again is another way to protect property owners or residents that are developing or redeveloping their properties.
How long would those liability protections last usually, is it?
Well, it's a good question. We as the city, where it's not something that they're doing for the city, we're just going to ask that, to provide justification that they have it at the time the development's going through. How long that carries and what the policy details are, we won't get into. That's up to the property owner, but it's one guardrail. Some more here. A lot of this again is still technical stuff. We've updated the appeals process. There used to be a specific SLEDS appeal process where both sides could pick a professional and they come in and have an appeals hearing, but we have a really good formalized, codified way to handle appeals of the zoning ordinance. So we've now just said, okay, appeals of this ordinance and any other will just be subject to the city's appeal standards for anything else. Now we'll go through the appendices here. These are the appendices in the ordinance are specific to each individual hazard. So we have an appendix for fault lines, we have one for slopes, we have one for groundwater, et cetera, et cetera. Appendix A is the hazard study area maps. I've shown you that already, but that's where those will go. Appendix B is the minimum standards for surface fault rupture studies. This is fault line studies. Again, we've added requirements to comply with the UGS circular document. We've added a building code table showing requirements for fault hazard studies based on age of fault and building risk category. Just more information we have to reference to, if a fault line is more likely to experience a ground shaking event, generally if it's younger, there may be more setback for that. It's a little riskier. There's also discrepancy in the current ordinance where one section says minimum distance for a single family home to a fault line is 15 feet. There's another section that says 20. All the industry standards say 15 is fine as a minimum baseline. The Planning Commission felt that setting it at a minimum of 20 is appropriate. And we did ask the professionals we worked with if they agreed, and they were fine with that as well. Because avoiding a fault line is one of the best ways to minimize risk of it, right? So the more you can avoid it, the better. The next appendix is slope stability. Again, we've updated hazard maps. We've added additional requirements for landslide reports and slope stability reports, confirming with the most recent industry guidelines that are out there. We've added requirements for soil and rock sampling to be based on standard guidelines. So a lot of information like that. Again, it's very technical, but making sure they're following the latest and greatest information out there. Liquefaction is ground, kind of soil conditions after ground shaking. We've added some new language into there, a new introduction section. We've added a requirement for these investigations to be performed with any other geotechnical or geologic hazard study prepared in the city, just to look at liquefaction potential. Because a bunch of different hazards have the potential to cause liquefaction, and they're all kind of related. We've added some updated information on safety factors and things like that based on the type of facility. So, how a critical facility or a really high occupancy building is designed and engineered is probably going to be different than a single family home or a utility station. They all have different risk factors associated with them, so that the table is updated accordingly. We've added a requirement for subsurface investigation, and also added a requirement for the project engineer to provide documentation that a building is designed to be protective of life during and after a seismic event. I think some of this language came from a member of the Planning Commission that's also a structural engineer. So that was really good insight to include here, that some of the structural details that we're asking for hadn't been included.
Who is that?
Commissioner Jessica Chappell. Debris flow hazard, again, this comment is common because this UGS circular document is newer. So just requiring compliance with that. Same thing with rockfall hazard studies. No changes proposed to groundwater source protection. Same thing with foundation observation standards. Again, a lot of these appendices are very detailed and technical already. So, these ones didn't merit any change. And then Appendix I is the riparian corridor and watershed protection. Again, this hazard is included as a listed natural hazard in today's ordinance, but it says go to, city code, whatever, to find these standards, and you go there and there's nothing. It doesn't exist. So new regulations have been drafted and proposed. I won't get into this too much tonight, but with a few minutes, I might just introduce it, and then that'll kind of tee us up for our discussion 2 weeks from now. But basically, riparian areas are areas including a stream or channel or wetland, and the adjacent land where the vegetation complex and microclimate conditions are products of the combined presence of perennial and water, associated high water tables and soils that exhibit some wetness characteristics. So a technical definition, but basically this is areas around open waterways. There is some sensitivity to those, and the purpose of us drafting standards here, one being that the ordinance, for a number of years has felt it important enough to mention this as a hazard that probably should have some standards. But we do want to protect, any sensitive area in the city, especially from the impacts of new development. And as the city continues to grow and mature, we find that a lot of the land left to be developed or redeveloped falls within one of these sensitive areas. We haven't had a lot of development around open waterways per se, but the more there's always demand for development in the city, and it seems more and more that we use the sensitive lands ordinance constantly. So the amount of good land or I guess unencumbered land is diminishing. So it's good to have hazard regulations as
Does this cover things like flood control?
Flood control. So we have groundwater and source protection, and then if
I'm thinking like the creeks and stuff that are right there. I mean, you obviously don't want someone coming in and adjusting banks or whatever so that the increase of flooding downstream increases.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing you'd be looking at.
Yeah. Now there are other entities like Salt Lake County Flood Control that will review that.
But also
FEMA to an extent, but this gets at that a little bit. So, again, this is drafted and geared around properties within the riparian protection areas. and new development. It does not apply to functions of regulatory agencies conducting necessary operations or emergency response measures. We're not trying at all to get in the way of that. And I'll just run through this and then we'll come back. But the proposed standards, and this has gone through a lot of public input and planning commission feedback. So this isn't necessarily where staff started with it, but this is where it ended after the planning commission process. The ordinance develops these riparian protection areas or zones. Basically, they regulate things differently based on proximity to the top of a bank. And the closer you are to the top of a bank, generally the more strict or the more the city's going to ask for reports and justifications when developing in those areas. The farther away you are, the less risk there is to the flood hazard or the water channel or anything like that. There's a table of use, and we'll go through each of those uses in the next meeting, but basically it's a table of uses that says if you're doing this activity, and then it's got four columns here. If you're doing it in area A, either you're allowed to do it, but you have to get DRC review and go through the SLUDS process, or in limited circumstances, you are not allowed to do it. And the not allowed is, you'll see next time, very rare, but it's the most intensive development activities would be not allowed close to the top of bank. Most restrictions, like I said, apply to new or substantial development activities. Maintenance of any existing use and structure is allowed. The ordinance is written and intended to allow people to continue using their property as they do today. Removal of hazard and dead trees is allowed. Removal of healthy trees, again, is allowed, but requires review. If we have a system of healthy, large, mature trees along a waterway providing bank stability and things like that, the ordinance is saying you can't go remove those, but come in and show a plan first, have a good reason and rationale for it.
Hey, Mike, so if we didn't have any previous standards, what did we rely on for this data that we're looking to impose
The
new standards?
sources,
Yeah.
I have a whole list. I don't want to miss it, but we talked with FEMA and Salt Lake County Flood Control, and same thing we did with fault standards and other things. Professors at the universities. We consulted other cities' ordinances and talked to staff at other cities, and it's kind of a combination of all those things.
Hey, Mike.
Again.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I'd also like to talk a little bit about that. We have a lot of my constituents in that area that have been very good stewards of their properties that happen to border the Little Cottonwood Creek. And they're very concerned about some of the language. I know that we've amended some of that language, and you've worked tirelessly to try to make that a better working document. But I would like to. I know that we're not going to talk about riparian too much tonight, but definitely have. And I have a lot of concern about some of the language in that document.
Yep. Yeah, Councilmember Peterson sent me a list of questions that I'll address in that next work session as well for the whole council. The last thing is certain development activities, like I said, require DRC review and approval. There are a few things that we're recommending not be allowed based on proximity to the creek. Most of the development activities defined in this draft ordinance are still allowed. They just require approval. And staff looks at that as, that's the same thing for developing near a steep slope or a fault line or anything else. There are houses today that exist right over the top of faults. You can keep having that. You can do interior remodels. When you expand it or redevelop, we're going to ask you to come in and study that. The same concept applies. So I truly mean when I say that, staff's proposal here is not meant to get in the way of any property rights or standards. We're looking to establish reasonable standards that apply mostly to new development and intense new development closest to these hazard areas. So I'll just leave it at that now, and then that should springboard us into a more detailed discussion next time.
Okay.
Any questions or follow-up information that you'd like between now and the next meeting?
I'll just take all the east half of Doug's questions.
Okay, fair.
No, thank you for your work on this, Mike. I know this is a lot, so thank you for all that you do to help us. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, The next item under staff reports is an introduction of the transportation master plan. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have our public works senior civil engineer, Adam Ginsberg. And then I think we have a representative from Horrocks, is that right? And your name?
Kevin Croshaw.
Kevin Croshaw. Okay, Kevin's with us as well, and so
It was from where?
Horrocks.
Okay.
Engineering. Yep.
Yeah, I completely did not hear that.
Okay.
You're on the hot seat, Adam, so.
Just mayor and council. It's his first presentation to a council, so
That's why I
Oh, but
was
it's fine.
trying to do a.
he's been having nightmares
Oh, that's not
or
good.
dreams.
So,
We're gonna be nice, Adam, I promise. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, city council. We have.
Oh, that's good.
There we go. So this is, oh, I have to share my screen. There we go. So this is the transportation master plan. We've been working with Horrocks Engineering to develop a transportation master plan that is building off of the 2019 capital facilities plan that was done. And that included a 10-year model. This 2050 transportation master plan goes all the way out for 30 years. A transportation master plan really is a document that incorporates all of the transportation, all the different transportation policy documents that have been adopted before it. In this case, we have, the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan. We're including all the projects in that. We also have the city master plans that have been developed. There was a Fort Union master plan done, and then also Wasatch Boulevard master plan, and also Gravel Pit master plan. The transportation model anticipates a level of service up to 2050. And the basis of that model uses the Wasatch Front data. They're called TAZ, traffic analysis zones, and they are the anticipated population based off of what is in that Wasatch Front model. And we have also the Gravel Pit, which is showing its own population density, and that was included in the model as well. I know there were some questions about the population that was used. So the reason that it's showing that number, I think it was like 50,000.
55.
Yeah, so that includes the anticipated population, plus it includes the employment population as well. So you're looking at kind of a build out scenario of the gravel pit. So that's what we use. This is, I want to say this is a draft document. What we're looking for is for council to give feedback and kind of provide, what their priorities are, what their vision is for transportation in the city moving forward. And we'll come back and we will, incorporate those requests into the final document.
Do you know, Adam, real quickly, if WFRC uses a vendor for this plan, or if they have employees that do it?
I'm almost positive it's in-house. I know that they have a lot of staff that is our transportation planners. They develop, if you look at what's on the 2019 RTP, the one that we went to last week, that was 2023. But the one from the previous one shows these economic zones in the gravel pit, and then also in Union Park area. So I think that is what from their model is generating the growth in Cottonwood Heights. So this master plan it's a model that goes out to 2050.
And we have also included the typical roadway classifications based off of the updated ordinance. So the goals of this master plan to develop an efficient and comprehensive transportation network for residents that integrates with the updated Wasatch Front Regional Transportation Plan to provide safe and efficient traffic movements in Cottonwood Heights, promote active transportation on all Cottonwood Heights roads, and identify locations for future neighborhood connectivity projects. So we have different sections in there for active transportation, and we have also a proposed project list based off of the model. And then in addition to that, it's kind of what the staff has identified as projects that we feel are helping the city's roads in particular. We didn't really look at this from a Wasatch Front perspective. We wanted the projects to reflect improvements that would work on the local roads. So I'm going to turn the time over to Kevin. He's going to kind of go through this and provide some of the data that was put into this plan. And then each one of you in your packets has been given a PDF of this master plan, and we encourage you to make comments and provide your priorities for it as well. And then we can come back at a future time and really look at this document. So
I don't know if you want to pass me the mouse and I can.
well, I can either do that, I can go like this, whatever you'd like to do. I can direct it, or I can give you my mouse too.
Let's do the mouse, yeah.
Take that.
Then I don't, or everyone with my next slide, please.
From what I understand, if we end up disputing population estimates, it wouldn't be too hard to plug in some different numbers to get some different results possibly. Is that right?
No, it wouldn't. Yeah, I think we would just want to make sure we keep the communication open
Okay.
and provide, updates that, that
Yeah.
you'd be looking for.
It's a physical model, computer model, so whatever population, if we prevail on the populations we're discussing now, or we have some adjustments, it's plugging those numbers in, and then the model will generate based on those things.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited to kind of talk about what we've worked on so far with the master plan, and kind of want to jump into some of the foundational information included in the master plan. The first is functional classification. The classification serves two purposes. One is mobility, getting around town, and the other one is access, having access to our homes, businesses, things like that. And those have an inverse relationship. So as you increase your mobility, you're going to decrease your land access. And so with that, the city's divided into different functional classifications to serve those purposes. And they're listed here. We've got the urban core arterials, urban arterials, urban collectors, and local roads. And typically these are spaced to the best of our ability, right, to optimize that traffic flow throughout the city and separate those trips throughout the city. See that. There we go. And so here's, as Adam alluded to, we worked with staff to provide typical cross sections. And I'll kind of click through these so you can see them all, or as exciting as it gets. But we've got our local cross section underneath the title here. And then we've got the 2-lane urban collectors with and without parking and bike lanes.
So in the urban collector, those are roads like Greenfield, 7200 South, Park Center, 17th East, 2030 East, parts of it, Hollow Mill, like those, the local collector roads.
Yeah, but then there's the 3-lane urban arterials. And there's just some different variability within that 75-foot right of way, including bike lanes, parking, and shoulders for those.
And we've made a lot of effort to include the active transportation in the cross sections, making pretty much every road in the updated cross sections includes some form of active transportation.
Okay, and then there's the urban core arterial for Fort Union. There's also the 3-lane and the 5-lane, and they kind of diagonal. So I'll use the mouse here to show that, those cross sections, and you'll see these in your packet. And then you have your 5-lane urban arterial and urban core arterial. And then lastly, we've got the urban core arterial cross sections also with the 7-lane urban arterial. So that's a quick look at those cross sections, and would love to hear any.
When you say Highland Drive or Fort Union, are those examples of that type of thing, or you're?
They're specific to Fort Union. So if you go back to the Fort Union one.
You want to go back?
Yeah, so the one in the top left corner, that is a 3-lane Fort Union, which would be,
East end of it then.
yeah, specific to 30th to Wasatch, and it shows the new plan to put a 20-foot pedestrian trail on the north side of the roadway.
Okay, well, all right. Maybe in the next revision of that, take the titles of each of the individuals, make them. That's the only thing that I can't see. I can see the card, I see the drawings really well, but I can't see which
Okay.
one is which without.
Perfect. That sounds.
Maybe
good.
that's my eyes, but.
Yeah.
Well,
It's hard to see. I know we wanted to, it's hard to fit all of them on.
And in the report, they're full size 11 by 17s.
Okay.
So it should.
Well, if I may interject, of course, we're interested in talking about designations and getting into some of this technical stuff, but of course, the council's primary, I feel that our primary responsibility is to our citizens. And I feel that making mobility and access the two principal metrics is not representing what our citizens have given us feedback for, which is that their predominant interest is in safety, slower speeds, less volume, safety. And so I didn't see in reviewing the transportation plan at this point, the emphasis that this council has made on safety, on no more than a 35-mile-per-hour road design going forward on any of our roadways, no matter what the designation. So I'm just, curious, if mobility and access are the guiding principles of this transportation plan, does that really fit with what this council sees, to my understanding, as our principal duty related to mobility, that is safety for all users? Can you speak to that?
I guess I don't know that I would say that that's the driving, that was kind of a spectrum on. I mean, you have freeways, you have local roads, and they provide different things. I guess I didn't interpret it that same way.
Yeah, I would say, safety is obviously a very important part of our roadways, but yeah, I think to your point, it's really the reason we split into different functional classifications is to allow where there's going to be higher vehicle traffic to allow that traffic to have, adequate traffic flow. But I think safety is definitely a very important part. And I think through, and I guess to kind of keep it this to kind of an introductory thing is definitely want your feedback on this and what we can do to make sure that safety is reflected in the plan.
Yeah, one of the key premises that I've objected to the developing arterials going on within Cottonwood Heights from the west side to the east side is that they're driven, from my understanding, from the principles of highway management. And as I reviewed the document, highway, as you know, there's another organization that is a driving force in the United States, NACTO, National Association of City Transportation Officials, which from what I can understand, puts much more emphasis on the residents, on safety than do highways, which are of course designed to move vehicles as fast and efficiently as possible. And so I want to start out going on record with the council that I'm very interested in our city. I mean, certainly we have to conform to state code and mandates. But there is a trend afoot throughout the United States for cities to put much more emphasis on safety and mobility for all users that's safe. And my concern in reviewing this and the tone of this transportation plan is it's very much led by the AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, and their level of service, reliability, things like access. I'm certainly not opposed. I want everybody to feel like they have access, etc. But what I'm looking for in a long-term transportation plan for our city is first and foremost safe mobility for all users. And so I'm going to be looking for that as we go through and
And we definitely want this to be, something that you.
I don't disagree with that. I will, just because as part of this, NACTO has some really good ideas in it. Okay, but it's critical for this council to understand that it's also designed around cities with populations in excess of 2 million people. Salt Lake only gets to be an adjunct kind of member to NACTO because they're a capital city in a very large, in the entire valley. And so while there certainly are a lot of good ideas in there, it is conformed to a little bit different thing than what Cottonwood Heights by itself is. That being said, I'm very interested to see, where there's a lot of things that we can do to improve things around here. We've got a built out network. So
one of the things to remember too is we are at a starting point. So this master plan is just the initial beginnings of presenting some ideas, and we can maneuver and direct this plan however we want. So
I just think it's important that staff resources and time, as well as the council's time, the public's time, that we identify, what we're trying to accomplish here, and be careful that we are not going down a path that is going to take us to a place where it's predominantly about building out and building for the sake of car-centric mobility. Certainly we want motorists to have good reliability in those elements, but we need, I think as a council, maybe I should be looking at the council, I think we need to come together around what we really want for our city. What do our constituents tell us they want? And is reliability and level of service the driving force or not? And
that's why I've suggested after we get our housing survey done, hopefully very, very soon, that the next one will be on transportation, answer some of those specific questions.
Yeah. Keep going. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for your input. And so working through with those typical the discussion of functional classification, here's the existing functional classification as is today. And the city also included are the intersections and I guess the intersection control, roundabout, stop signs, and traffic signals. So this is what it looks like today. And then looking at level, sorry, did you have a question? Okay.
I was just going through the legend.
Okay, so do you want me to run back to that or
no? Go ahead.
Okay. And then so the next topic, level service, kind of how we grade performance of a road. It's a letter system A to F.
So just for how you grade the performance of a road for vehicles.
For vehicles. Yes. And looking at, it's an A through F scale, and unlike all of us who got A's in schools and we went to school, right? Kind of the national standard for acceptable level of service is D, which will provide you kind of that balance, because if we build the level service A, we're going to overbuild roads, right? It's be very expensive But then level of service D gives you, you'll have typical congestion in those peak hours of the day, and then the rest of the day, you'll see a good traffic flow. And so here is for, for roadway level service, we look at daily traffic volume for this type of analysis. And so you can see whether it's an arterial or collector and the number of lanes, what those thresholds are for level of service. And with intersections, this is for reference, there's the intersection level service is based on delay per vehicle. And it's, there's just so many factors that make an intersection work traffic wise, that it is a delay of a second per vehicle. And so for signalized intersections, you have your level service thresholds on the left column, and for stop control or roundabout is on the right. And so with that, kind of jumping into kind of what we're doing is from a master planning standpoint, we're looking at the 30,000 foot level. And so there's different types of analysis we can do. There's the high level with the WFRC travel demand model, looking at, roadway and intersection level service, looking based on those roadway traffic volumes. There's also the detailed level of analysis where you have VISM and Synchro, which are traffic modeling programs, where you look at specific corridors or intersection. That's really in-depth models that you can build for an intersection type of a thing. And so just as we kind of go through this, these master planning projects are a high level type of analysis. And so we're looking at the whole system as a whole, and so kind of diving into that, looking at Adam alluded to the traffic analysis zones. So how this model works is the entire Wasatch Front is split up into these traffic analysis zones, and within those zones are housed socioeconomic data, and that data is what kind of generates trips into and out of those zones. And so every time we run this model, it is the entire Wasatch Front, so it brings the region into perspective, but we also take into account local studies that have been completed. For example, the Wasatch, the gravel pit study. We make some adjustments based on the results of that study.
This is the application. You can click on the zone and see where every trip went to.
No, this is based
Gives
off
you
of,
the economics inside of
this is
those
home
zones.
and businesses
Yeah.
and average trip counts generated by what's in that.
Yes, and so what we've presented on this map
Much
is
bigger chunk.
kind of the 2050 population based on that data within those zones. So it was kind of give you an idea of how that model works.
You can see the gravel pit 15,291, and in the existing TAS model will be 0. But that's one of the big
When you
drivers of that population.
Okay, so we also did some traffic counts to help calibrate the data in the model, but looking at the existing volumes, this is the existing level service within the city. And again, this is based on the roadway capacity and the traffic volume. So here's existing level service.
Is there a reason that we can't include UDOT's roads on these in our classifications, just for information?
I'm going to not touch that third rail right now. We can include UDOT. We originally looked at this with some UDOT projections, but based on our council and our city's position and where things are, we felt it best to leave it off until we come to some sort of a conclusion.
So
But
it's
it doesn't,
possible, it's just not.
the data is in there for movement. It's just, we're not showing it on here.
Okay. So again, this is existing level service. And then what we do, I guess a quick, so we did what's called a short-term analysis and a long-term analysis. And that kind of helps us put together the project list, but the short-term analysis is from 2023 to 2032. And this corresponds with WFRC's phase 1. And this helps just bring this plan and be cohesive with the other planning in the region.
And so this is what we call the no build level of service. Where we say, okay, we're gonna let the development happen, but let's not do any improvements and see, and it kind of helps us start to build. Where we're gonna do projects. Or maybe what improvements could be needed. And so you'll see this is the no build level of service, and then we did a. All right,
I said 2030s, that surprises me. And I guess that's a little surprising, but that's.
It is because of the classification as a collector.
Okay.
And it does have different thresholds depending on level of service for a collector versus an arterial.
Isn't this considered an arterial?
Yes, that one, he was pointing to 23.
Yeah, well, in 23.
I believe is it 15,000, so it's just barely, Wasatch is in 23, just barely over.
I mean, the other ones make a lot of sense. That one's, okay.
Yeah, 2030s doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That's my neck.
It's because it's a two-lane roadway.
Yeah, it's based on volumes and road classification. I mean, sometimes, and a lot of these things to fix them, you're talking operational issues, which are, just
Yeah, we don't-
crosswalks, middle lane or a turn lane, things like that really improve.
So what's the
versus
criteria
widening.
though that's making it go red?
So the level of service, if you go back to that table. Right here. That level of service for a collector, 2 lanes is 12,100. That's in level of service E, is that correct?
yeah, so it's just barely over.
So 12,100, and then we go back to,
And if we use the standard of LOSD, which is what we've talked about.
So it's
And the
half-
model kicks it out. So I mean, we're 100 cars over, 200 cars over. But this is where things are, so.
One of the things that I just, I see is that, this is all based on continuing to do what we've always done. There was an interesting article in the paper just today about a woman conjecturing, what if as we trend forward, we don't have this Monday through Friday rush hour for a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the afternoon. What if society, what if businesses started deciding, wow, we're going to let people work, Thursday through Monday, work from home, do these other things. And, what can we do? I'm very interested in our city leading the way. And what can we do instead of doing what we did in the 20th century? What can we do going forward to make life better, to make it safer, to make it a higher quality of life? And to do these levels of service that are based on, this antiquated system of everybody pours onto the road for an hour and a half at this time in the morning and another hour and a half in the late afternoon. To build out our roadways and project and continue to go down a path that is frankly unsustainable, maintaining asphalt, everything that it does to our storm drains, the acidification of and the pollution in our air. I'd really like to question these things and come up with a really innovative transportation plan that envisions something different going out to 2050 than simply doing what was done in the 20th century.
Well, then we're gonna need to, if that's the approach we're gonna take, it's a start all over with this. And we have issues and needs related to our transportation right now. I mean, if we're not going to plan for this in this way, at this point, I don't know how you do it. We can't conjecture on what the future may or may not be. I think if those things start to occur, then we're gonna have to address this, but as staff, we need direction from the council. This is the approach based on data, based on needs, based on, I get a lot of calls, and I know Matt does too, about concerns about traffic and how it moves. If we're gonna take a whole different methodology related to this, then I have concerns with that at this
No,
point.
and I agree with you, Tim, but I think my most pressing concern is that the data is correct. Because I've never been on 2030s and been backed up one single time. And so that's not a level F or E road right now. It's just absolutely not.
Well, that's if we did nothing until 2030.
No, that's current. It's existing.
It's current.
Oh, but it was
a
a
short term up to 2030. It says
So
that
yeah,
that's our
currently
current.
it's right there at the
traffic counts there?
threshold, and then that no build is a couple hundred trips more. So there's not much growth on that road. You're just right there. just based
So,
on.
so anyway,
again, on
but
the-
so data is more important to me now than, so that we make good decisions. Is what, I would enjoy.
Well, and I support, I definitely am all about the data. In fact, one of the big concerns for the people in my district is that UDOT is working off of data that is several years old, certainly pre-COVID. And I'm interested and if it takes the city and some of our budget to do better analysis, so we're working from data and we're making so careful that we don't induce demands on our road by widening them prematurely.
Kim, so how are they getting these traffic count numbers? Do you know?
So we did do traffic counts. So we went throughout the city and we did some traffic
You
counts.
guys did.
We did. Mhm.
Yeah, we utilized UDOT's data,
And then,
and then also we had Horrocks collect data as well. So, and we could look at 2300 East to see what the ADT is.
Yeah, I would love to
See
see.
if that's
UDOT's
changed
reporting it at 14 in 2019. That's the most current one they have
on
on
the
there.
Google map
14,000.
or the Google. thing.
Yeah, their
Yeah.
KMZ
and I'm
thing.
trying to remember off the top of my head, I can't remember if we counted that. or not.
I'd
I know
have
we
to look
counted,
honestly, but
um,
I know that, 12,100 is right at that cusp, but we could easily right now be shown at not a level of service E, but as a D. Because I agree with you that it's, for the most part, it flows, acceptable.
Yeah, if you added another semaphore or two on that street, you.
So, and I'll point out the proposed project in 2050 for 2300 East is more about providing sidewalk
Center lane.
and adding that center turn lane,
Yeah.
which was there originally with the in front of the post office, but we removed it when we put in the bike lane. So, and the bike lane's kind of narrowed down in parts where the road's not wide enough and there's no sidewalk. So 2300 East definitely is a road that could be improved.
Right.
and I think one thing I'd like to add is I like to call these living master plans, because again, I think to your point, Mayor, you said as we grow, and maybe it was your point too. I mean, things change, right? We're assuming we're driving in 2050 like we're driving today. But as those things change, these master plans get updated, frequently.
Yeah, I mean,
Kinda
I'm
make
trying to
sure
remember
we're-
what percentage of trips are under 5 miles. It might have even come up at the
Most.
WFRC. It was at least 35%, maybe it was higher. And I think our citizens are telling us in surveys that they're interested in a more walkable. They want to ride their bikes, but our roads are not safe for bike riding. We have intermittent bike lanes, they stop and end, and we don't have routes that are safe, and we are overwhelmingly getting the input that that's where our citizens want to go, and they make up a large percentage of the cars on our roads.
I think there's an assumption that they're also going to be able to get in their car and go downtown and not have it take an hour and a half. So, I mean, yeah, they're saying that, but they're also not saying congest my roads so bad that I feel compelled to either not go downtown at all or that I have to walk. There's a balance there, and that's where I think we need a transportation survey would really, those where we can put some of those pluses and minuses. But yeah, that's got a lot more red on it, doesn't it?
Yeah, so then this is the long term, and this corresponds to WFRC's phase 2 and 3. Time frame, so 2033 to 2015. So again, in 2050, you see it just with the growth, there's a little more red that creeps in there. And this is where we use these again as a base to start working with staff to say, okay, what improvements can we do? Because some just aren't feasible, right? We can't just widen everything. So, what projects are, what can we do to at least improve to the best of our ability, these roadways to at least for growth.
And providing alternative forms and paths
Mhm.
is one way to reduce that demand.
Yes.
Wouldn't get rid of it.
So this is the proposed, so the projects to meet the future demand, and you'll see that there's the numbers are numbered based on the phase and the priority. So 1.1 is phase 1 top priority, and then phase 2.1 same thing. And then here's the summary of those projects and what the improvement would be on there. And so I'll flash that quick. And then for completing all those improvements and those projects, this would be the future roadway network for Cottonwood Heights, including the intersections. I know that legend is pretty small, but that would be the future roadway network for. Again, would love all of your feedback on the master plan. We definitely want to work with you to get this ready for a future.
Yeah.
So Mayor, at some point, so thank you to Horrocks and Adam for doing this, but at some point, we need input from where we are. If there's philosophical changes in transportation for the city, we need to address that. The master plan was developed around standard engineering practices and procedures based on existing data that we have. We can certainly push deeper into that data, and if we want to make adjustments, we can. That adjusts the transportation, the analysis zones. We can do those things, but we would like to come back and we'll work with Tim and you to schedule our next work session where we would get into this a little more. But between then and that point, between now and that point, anything you would like to send over to us so that we can input it and start looking at it before that work session and have that discussion. And once we, I say we as a council have decided the direction we'd like to go, and you come up with this would need to go to a public hearing or a public meeting for review and their comments, and then at some point we'll adopt it. We're not in a rush right now to adopt it. I think we've dealt with the design speeds already through our ordinances to take care of that, and things of that nature, but we are looking to move forward. The thing about a transportation master plan is development does come in and things happen. If we have an adopted transportation plan, that property would need to build to our adopted cross sections and plans as they go along, similar to what we did on Fort Union with those two projects. So it does become an important tool for all of us, for developers, staff, and as a council.
Would we
and
use this
residents.
to look for funding?
We can use it to look for funding. If it's identified on there, we can do that. So it does, it is necessary to have it.
Give me money.
But like I said, we want to do it right, and we want to make sure that we're getting to where we can on this. So any questions at this point, or?
No, I guess I skipped ahead because I finally just brought it up on my own computer, so I have to keep staring up there. Because what we just did. Well,
You'll do this in a minute.
Yeah, the Mid-Valley Transportation Plan. I mean, there's a huge, long list of projects on whatever page 4 that is, that all deal with bicycle byways and stuff like that. That I'm glad to see that that's incorporated in here because that's how I see it working. That's a lot of work to get some of those connectivity things done.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Adam and Matt and Kevin, right? So I appreciate all the work that's gone into that, and we got a lot of work ahead of us as the council to, I think Galen brings up a lot of really good points, and I think the council needs to deliberate and ponder and decide what we want to see our city become transportation wise. And so that's our job, and thank you for the starting point. And then there's a lot of good data in there, and we'll keep you engaged and get to a final point eventually. So, okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. Yep. Okay.
1.2, that's all I need. 2300 each, 1.11.
So last under staff reports is the Canyon Center traffic study. So we'll let Matt go anywhere, and then we'll have you do that presentation, Matt.
Okay, Mayor and Council, just we brought this forward before. Y'all have seen it. This was the study that we did where we reevaluated the Canyon Center, and we went over all of their master plans or transportation plans that they had put forward. And one of the discussions, part of that was, are they creating more traffic in the area? And one of the things we did find out that their studies were all seem to come out the way they should, based on, like we said, all standard practices. And so it turned out well, but one of the things we did find, and it didn't really take a study to find this, but it was part of it, was the traffic issues we run into that really affect the neighborhood to the west of the Canyon Center development. And we talked about some of those projects. So what we want to do is bring this back. There's been some discussion and questions about where we are on it. So we wanted to share with you some of the small things we've done, and then talk about a couple of the projects and see how you as a council would like to move. So this is the general area. Once again, give you an idea. Nutri, Reindeer, Macintosh, Pippin, and Racket Club. And what we run into, and we've seen it during the heavy snow days, we have the traffic that backs up on Fort Union to either go up Big Cottonwood or Little Cottonwood, and people that want to go up Little Cottonwood will tend to cut through the neighborhoods and move around and try to skip the intersection. By doing so, it creates blocks, traffic blocks. We get calls during the heavy snow days of this, probably, 5-6 times. I know the police will probably get more than that, of being blocked in or not able to get out. So we looked at this area and thought we'd look at it. So as far as the study parameters, we did a peer review of the Canyon Center, which we talked about, trying to reduce in this study the passenger traffic through the neighborhood, improve residential access to Fort Union, improve pedestrian safety across Fort Union, reduce the access to commercial development through the neighborhood. You'll notice the neighborhood has a theme here. And then the parking that occurs quite a bit on Racket Club. So in order to do that, we looked at some things, came down to our recommendations were some simple striping on Fort Union with signs. There's some more expensive items, such as a hawk signal for the crosswalk, which is really a budgetary item and a project item. Signals also on Fort Union, a little further down, permanent closures of Racket Club, which we'll talk a little bit about tonight, really briefly. And then the mitigation impacts, the dollars. So these were the things we talked about doing with you as a council. So what we've done to date, and when I say to date, I mean this morning, we have gone in and put in on all the intersections we've identified the do not block, to try to encourage people on Fort Union to leave that open so residents can get in and get out of the neighborhood. Signs are ordered, and should be here, and they'll be installed at all the intersections. Do not block the intersection. All of these things are occurring. So not a heavy budget item, but something we did within our contract of our striping. And we're going to see how that works out for us. Obviously, when it's snowing and the road's covered with snow and ice, you can't see that, but hopefully the signs will give that indication. It also gives our officers, something to hang their hats on if they have to go up and move people along and do things like that. These were the other projects, just really quickly. And the one we wanted to talk about, I know there's been some discussion. I haven't had any feedback from residents, so I'm not sure where you are as a council, if you've had any feedback. One of the things we did talk about that can be done to help with this traffic that cuts through is coming in and putting an actual hard closure at this. I know it's hard to see right here, but this hard location, a hard closure right here. What that does, it stops the traffic from coming off Fort Union and going up any of these roads. And what the traffic is doing now is cutting through, getting on Canyon Center and trying to skirt around the intersection and go up Little Cottonwood Canyon. So by blocking that, it becomes a full hard block. It keeps the traffic. Obviously, they can't go through there. There are some issues that need to be looked at. I know from emergency personnel issue is access in there, or their time for an emergency. They would need to be looked at and reviewed if we were to put that hard closure. I don't know what kind of time that would add to it. They certainly would know better than I on that. And then there's the question about how popular / unpopular that would be for residents. I am concerned if we go in and do a temporary closure, that doesn't show up on the access maps, such as Google, Waze, all of those things. It doesn't show up as a temporary, so cars can still read it, try to cut through and find out there's a closure. Then they have to turn around and head back the way they came out. So we're creating a double traffic jam, if you will. If it's a hard closure, Google will pick that up eventually. It will not show up on the maps as an access through and stop that type of traffic cut through. That's the idea. Now, that's the next one on the list that is the least expensive, if you will, that really has a big impact on the cut through traffic
And
and the parking,
that solution came to me from a resident
as
originally.
well as the parking.
The problem is it may cut down on cut through traffic, but it doesn't actually reduce traffic.
No, I'm not,
Because
we're
through
not
the
reducing traffic on Fort
It does
Union.
through the
No,
neighborhood,
it
just not
doesn't.
on Fort
No, it
Union.
doesn't. It barely, it might reduce it 12% or so. It's not a huge reduction. Because the same thing happens with every single person that is in there, is they're doubling their ins and out, going a different direction. And that's, we've done. I've got 2 studies in Cottonwood Heights on closures, which shows that. We just did another one a few weeks ago with Doug on the cut through traffic.
So Scott, so we're talking about snow days when Fort Union gets backed up, people are cutting through the neighborhood. And if they can't go to that, through that plate, they're gonna stay on Fort Union. So, I mean, I don't understand how we're saying that it's not gonna reduce traffic in the neighborhood.
Are you just gonna put up on snow days?
No,
Okay. Because again, on 66. I'm gonna say the wrong 66, 710, the one speed bump alley.
66, 75.
It's been long enough. We had temporary closures. We did the before and the afters, total counts. Okay, they, that location, they went down. That was, I think that was the 18%. That was the highest I got. The other one we had was closing off Oak Creek Drive when they repaired the bridge for 4 months, the befores and the afters. The actual total traffic reduced 12%. It's not a 50, it's not a 60, 75% reduction of the actual traffic on the road, because as is almost always the case, and the police know this very, very well, if you go to any particular neighbor, but 85, 90% more of the traffic is local. It's the people who live there. And there are very poor examples of, we've already got a few of these in the city that really ultimately, just from a connectivity standpoint, ought to be removed.
Go back
But
to-
that's,
This one.
that's like taking out stop signs. It can be
Well,
really.
you know, if
hot
I may, Councilman Bracken, I think that perhaps what's on some of our mind is that what makes this a little bit different is you don't have a lot of residential here that's trying to go here. Probably the houses along here, they'll be impacted.
They're the
You
ones
know, in
asking
terms
for
of
it,
maybe,
right?
you know, some of the people that live along here wanting to drive directly out instead of having to go through here and end up going out on Pippin. But I know that I interacted with the city manager related to the only way to me to make the efficacy better on those roughly, let's say, 20 mornings out of the, and that's, you know, 20 mornings out of a given ski season would be if, and I was taught that the reason why we don't want to put no through traffic signs at these entries is that on a year-round basis, I don't know, Tim, you want to restate what you told me?
Well, they're public streets. Is that
I
what
mean,
you're talking about?
Yeah, but I'm wondering if on these 20 mornings a year, just like we had the little tent signs. I know there was one on my street about trunk or treat, and it was up the 2 weeks before trunk or treat. What if we have, I know we don't have enough personnel in the city to be at every single intersection for 2 hours every snow morning. But is it possible to consider the city having some kind of modus operandi that on these 20 mornings, we had some kind of a temporary sign that indicated, no through traffic? Only because my concern about doing this is if it doesn't appear on those apps, as Mr. Shipp was saying, then how are the people driving in thinking they're going to cut through? Then they suddenly get here and now they're trying to figure out how to go back out and.
It would need to go to a permanent, a permanent closure. But so the other thing that the residents that I know that are affected. So because the parking is so poor for Alpha Coffee, Porcupine, so those cars park all the way up and down that street, and the neighbors hate it. So it would stop at that closure. That would force people to start using that parking garage for
Which
parking.
is over here, this one here.
Well, I guess that depends on that barrier, because it wouldn't stop any.
Up to the barrier.
If you figure. They did this on the street where I used to walk to school for junior high. I went there a couple years ago. It says, oh, look what they did. For parking, I just parked on the other side of the barrier because where I wanted to go was only another 1/8 of a mile or so. And so I just got on and I went on there. I've now got 3 hard sets of data that says the closure, they don't tend to work the way people think that they will. And that's one concern. The overall access and connectivity is another. I don't mind a no through traffic sign, that doesn't bother me, but the reality is taking a public street and saying to the public, you're not allowed to use this anymore the way that anybody else can.
It's really just a change in road design. So we're closing the street, and it's just a change in road design.
Well, it is, and it's one that goes against connectivity and yeah.
In that neighborhood, there's no connectivity issues. So, but anyway, so what we need to do,
You're creating.
what we need to do as a council is see if we have a consensus for this specific issue. If we don't, we'll move on. So, maybe we'll talk about that more individually. I would be in favor of it. Scott's a hard no. And then we've got.
I would be in favor of it if it allows for pedestrian and cyclists to be, of course, be able to get by, which I know that was indicated in the Hornet study, but in terms of motorists,
Yeah.
again, my thing is there just aren't that many, I think, that are going to have a problem with changing their pattern to drive this way and go out Pippin, because there's not a lot.
The
None
residents.
of these houses here access this way, they all access that way. So in terms of the houses, the residents that are actually impacted are just kind of right in here.
Yeah, and they're the ones who came to me.
And they're the ones that wanted this. So I would be in favor of.
Okay, but La Cresta is a huge, enormous example of why it's bad and why it really works against the overall good, because La Cresta, if you try to go east, there's a wall. Okay. Everyone moves over to Rolling Nose. Okay, Rolling Nose has an inordinate amount of traffic because everything's focused there. I say, well, we need to put in a semaphore. Well, we can't put in a street light because there's one on La Cresta. Well, why did the wall get put in there? It was, well, everybody over in that neighbor says, well, we don't want their kids walking to or driving to our school. I don't know what it was. It was way before my time. I would also question highly the number of cars that actually increase on a snow day down that road. I know it doesn't take it past capacity. That's just not going to happen in a residential neighborhood. But I mean, if you want to take counts now and then go through some snow days and see how many more cars actually get increased through that area? To see what kind of a magnitude of an issue you're trying to solve? Because if it's 20 or 30 cars, then I don't see that as a significant problem for a public street that can handle 6,000 to 8,000 cars a day.
Councilmember Peterson, I know you're still on the phone. Councilmember Newell, what are your thoughts?
I'd like to just, I always go back to surveying those immediate residents, but I think it's a good idea because of the parking issue there. I do worry about the future development being an issue in that area as well.
As those apartments get built, they will
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah, that would be another one of my big concerns as far as the traffic goes, but I don't see it being an issue for the most part, except we have to take into consideration that future growth in that area.
Yeah.
Mayor. Yes, this is not the only cut through area. We know that on the east side of Wasatch, that's been a perennial problem because Google will try to get you to a parallel road to get you through that, that stopped area. And it really comes down to the congestion that we have on those, the few number of serious snow days that we have. But when it does get bad, it gets horrendously bad. And I guess we could, like on La Cresta, Council Brackett and I were there were a lot more, in that case, a lot more local traffic than we expected. So there are points on both sides, but when do we have our officers? And we've had our officers on the east side of Wasatch trying to basically monitor all those roads that are backed up there. So a hard closure without a hard closure, I guess the problem is Google will take them there. And I don't know, it's a complex problem that I'm not exactly sure of the perfect solution for it.
Matt, what do you think would between a temporary and permanent closure? So options, you would start with a temporary and move to a permanent?
We can start, we can do a temporary permanent. Nobody's gonna move it. We have Jersey walls we can put up. But Mike, like I said, my concern is doing something that this time of year, from a transportation point of view, I agree 100%. Closing things and connectivity for cars, keeping them flowing is, you want that. Transportation engineers hate cul-de-sacs because we can't move cars. But at the end of the day, though, we are trying to solve an issue that is particular to this neighborhood. We do get calls. I get calls where cars telling me they can't back out because they're being blocked in their own neighborhood from cars. I don't know, that's an anecdotal thing, but those are calls that I get on WineSap. I do take those calls, but doing a closure during the winter right now, just before we get into this, I have concerns that it's not going to show up. And so it's the in and out movement, cars coming in, maybe getting frustrated, either speeding out, or you're going to end up with the same thing going both ways. That's my concern. Blocking it, we can block it. It's not going to cost anything but to just load them up and haul them over there. And at that point, we can put up no through traffic, and whether people will read them or not is a whole different ballgame. And we can even go so far as to put, try to sign it a little more, but doing temporary signs during those particular times is problematic. Staffing, cost, people walking off of the sign, does it meet MUTCD standards, yada, yada, yada. There's a whole litany of issues there we need to address. But I am to answer your question, whatever direction you would like us to go, I can support both directions. I really can.
So there's two issues, the bypassing, trying to get to Wasatch Boulevard to Little Cottonwood Canyon by going to the neighborhoods. The other one is I get calls from a neighbor that when trucks come on that road to go to a business and they don't know where they're going and they go down all the way into that racket club circle and turn around, and closing it would stop all of that commercial traffic going
Well,
into that neighborhood.
not necessarily. If someone doesn't know where they're going, they're gonna get up to the blockage and then they're gonna have to back up a box truck or a semi or whatever it happens to be down the road in front of the other
They just
neighbors.
have to go to the Canyon Center Parkway.
I would still say, we don't have any idea what the magnitude of the problem is. Well, I would say you take counts now and then you get some counts out there on a few of these snow days to see. I mean, if the traffic triples up on that road, then, I mean, that makes a more compelling argument. I mean, as someone who lives next to a road that doubles in traffic on certain days of the year, 180 of them to be exact. I mean, I understand it, but I also understand I live where I live, but I'd much rather see, quantify it, and because I agree with Matt, doing something now is probably gonna create more problems if the issue is, as is being reported, there's that much there. Having people come up and find a blockage only to have to turn around amongst each other is gonna create a huge issue this winter time.
I think this offers an opportunity for some flexibility in what we do here. We can put up temporary barriers, see how that works this winter, get the feedback from the residents. Also, get some data built up, and then make a decision after, an entire season goes by, just to take a look at it. That way there's no damage done, right? Except for a little bit of.
And that's what we did on 6675.
Yeah, but I like that one, so let's not go there.
Well, I mean, we shut it down.
Temporary request from Google.
I would love to, because I want to stop them from driving in front of my home too.
We looked at this about 3 years ago and did not get anywhere trying to.
They want to lay some fiber, maybe we'll have to ask for a favor.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, well, we'll get you some direction in the next day or two. Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
And I just want to say thank you for all those that led putting this agenda together, that this was discussed today, because it is such a timely thing. And I know the residents are wanting relief this winter. So I appreciate, as the representative of this district, that you got this on the agenda and we're trying to take it to the next level. So thank you, everyone.
And good thoughts. They're all valid.
Yep.
So last, we have a review of calendars and upcoming events. So the Light the Heights, first off, we had a great event yesterday on Halloween. We did a trunk or treat. And I had as many people come as we've ever had before, is what I've been told. So we have Light the Heights will be held on November 28th from 6 to 9 here at City Hall. I would encourage everyone on the council to be here for that. That was a really fun event last year. Future council meetings, city council meetings in the rest of 22, November 15th, December 6th and 20th. We are looking at possibly moving the 20th meeting of December to the 13th. So if you have any feedback about not doing that, that would take the meeting out of Christmas week. And
That's a good idea.
And would push it a week earlier.
That's the feedback.
So anyway, and those meetings will start at 4 with a business meeting at 7. Then the last planning commission meeting of 2002 will be held November 2nd, tomorrow at 5 p.m. We know there's some interest in that with some Dover Hill agenda items. Okay, so we do not have anything to discuss in a closed meeting today. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to close our work session and move into our 7 p.m. business.
I'll motion to close our work session meetings.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned.
Caroline and Sean.